I used to travel to the moon when I was young. As a child, I would run out the door, down my driveway, into my backyard, a small plot of grass, which was home to my landing pad. I would get onto my glider and go back and forth, catapult through the stars, and land on the moon. When I touched base, I would excitedly run off and get onto my two-wheeled lunar rover. I would then race down the sidewalk until I got to my moon base. I'd do a little dance, collect some moon rocks, and I'd be off, back towards my spaceship, taking me back home to Earth. All in a half an hour, and all before dinner. My imagination had manipulated time. Time for me was malleable. Time for me was inconsequential. But as adults, we experience time very differently. We experience time, and in turn reality, linearly. Time seems to have a duration. Time is measured by clocks ticking away towards some sort of endpoint, measured in movements, measured by moments. And we have a very linear way of viewing past, present, and future. And as a society, we have to function this way. But our notion of time is starting to change. Things are speeding up. So we used to measure time geometrically, and we used to experience time linearly, sequentially. But now we are experiencing time exponentially, and we are measuring it as if we were going through it simultaneously. And that is changing the very definition of time. So what do I mean by this? I can have one life and one persona in the real world. I can have another life and embody another persona in the virtual world, and another life and another persona in the digital world. And we are living in a time where things are becoming much more complex at such a faster and faster rate, but we are becoming much more adept at navigating these very disparate realities. Time has become our greatest luxury. Time in many ways is the new luxury value proposition, because if you define it as something that is in high demand and short supply, I am sure that everyone would say time. Time is the new currency. But to view time as simultaneous in many ways is to change its very definition. According to Einstein, time is fluid. Time is relative. And the demarcations between past, present, and future are merely illusions. So where do we go from here? So in our shop, we have a term to encompass all of the disruptive changes that we see happening around this new construction of time, and it's called Templosion. And Templosion refers to the implosion of the biggest of things, the biggest of events, happening in shorter and shorter periods of time. So this can apply to everything from strategic planning cycles to corporate lifespans to even the way in which we communicate. It's as if we were experiencing time on steroids, because everything is becoming so truncated. So let's look at a few ways in which this whole notion of Templosion is playing out for all of us. The first way in which we see it playing out is through generational compression. Now, market researchers and demographers will typically segment a generation into 12 to 15-year age cohorts. Now, in an age of Templosion, this has become completely inadequate for the world into which we are moving into. So let's look at my experience, for example. Far be it for me to stand up here and give away my age, but not only am I technically a millennial, but I was born in 1981. So if you look at my college experience, I had access to no social media, I used AOL Instant Messenger, and I still went to a physical library to study for my tests. Now, my husband, who was born just 2 years before me, 1979, his experience was almost identical. But we are spoken to as if we are part of two generations, him Gen X and me Gen Y. When we share a similar frame of reference, we share similar worldviews, similar values and attitudes. But you take someone born just 2 to 3 years after me, my age junior, who their college experience, shaped by social media, shaped by access to completely new technological tools, they had a totally different experience, but yet we are spoken to as if we are part of the same generation. What is wrong with this thinking? In an age of Templosion, when technologies are escalating, I would argue that generations today have to be defined in 2 to 3 year age cohorts. And this is important because technology is changing our brains. We know this to be the case with especially the younger generations having access to technology from the time that we are born. We are creating cyber hybrids. So we have to become much more comfortable in the highly segmented world that generational Templosion will usher in. The second way in which we see Templosion playing out is through the rate of technological change. Now, the boundaries between that which is real and that which is virtual are starting to blur. Now, I define virtual reality as tricking the brain into believing it is somewhere else, doing something else in real time. So instead of going to the Egyptian pyramids, you can instantly be transported there. Or instead of learning about neuroscience, you can become a neuron and learn more in a truncated period of time than you would otherwise. And we're replicating the sense of sight, but increasingly other senses are going to have to catch up. So haptics, the sense of touch, and most importantly, smell, which we know is most closely associated with memory. And after that, we're also right on the precipice of holographic technology, where you can transport your holographic twin in real time anywhere in the world and anywhere that you can imagine, thus bringing a very Star Trekian future to life. Now, we still do not have the ability to beam ourselves up like they did on the Enterprise, but we are creating the illusion of it. The third way in which we see Templosion playing out is through the skills and the competencies that are going to be needed on the part of the human in an age of technological Templosion, and in an age when robotics and artificial intelligences are increasingly substituting for not just human-based manual labor, but human-based cognitive labor. So what is the role of the human in this entire ecosystem? We have to not just be smart, we have to be intelligent. What is the difference? Smart is based on rote memorization. Smart can go onto software. Smart can be automated. But intelligence is different. That requires true critical thinking. And it's figuring out the solution to a problem when you've never been faced with it before. And it's not just being intelligent, but it's also becoming lifelong learners. And it's getting up on the forgetting curve. We are always taught that learning ends when school ends, but as we extend the lifespan, and as knowledge gets recycled, and that which we had learned the year prior becomes rendered obsolete, we have to constantly be refreshing our knowledge bases. And we also have to get comfortable abandoning information that we might hold sacred, but that no longer serves us for the future in which we are moving into. So technologies continue to leapfrog each other at an exponential rate, such that new developments and new discoveries are in some ways far outpacing our ability to even understand what's going on. So as such, we are reaching an absolute zero point, where the time between transformations and the time between disruptions is literally collapsing on itself, such that our ability to adapt and respond becomes significantly harder. So we always, and it's human nature to do this, we straight line extrapolate based on where we think the future is moving, what it means, and we define our view of the future and our reality that way. But the future is going to be made up of many and multiple futures. And our reality is going to be made up of multiple and many realities. And if we look at what quantum physics is proving out, quantum physics is showing us that there is not just one Big Bang, there are many Big Bangs, and they might still be occurring. And that we live not just in a universe, but rather in a multiverse, in multiple dimensions that we could only imagine and theorize about are beginning to emerge. And perhaps the most elusive of all of these dimensions, the fourth dimension, time, is on track to not only be one of the most manipulated, but also one of the most greatly understood. So the more we can measure, the more we can understand. And the more we can understand, the more we can imagine. And the more we can imagine, the more we can expand our consciousness. Science, like quantum physics, and technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D and 4D printing, the rise of the neural net and deep learning, artificial intelligence, and even wearable technology, which we know will give rise to edible, injectable, invisible, and embeddable technologies. All of these things are combining and recombining to completely change the way in which we view our role as humans in this reality. And we are on the precipice, as humans, to decide for the first time ever, not only who, but truly what we become as a species in the future. So there is a way of viewing things where you see the stars, and you see it as one star at a time. But then you blur your vision, you obscure it, and you realize something very profound. You realize that everything is connected, that everything is part of a bigger ecosystem. And you realize that what drives that ecosystem is energy, and energy underpins everything, and time is energy. So just like how I used my imagination as a child to take me to the moon in a short period of time, you start to realize that time, in its very essence, is abstract. And you start to realize that the influence over time is so powerful. So in a time of compression, when things are literally compressing into and onto themselves, make sure to waste it wisely. Thank you.